they're the same people they always were. And if you reach out to them and you say, okay, why did you do this? Don't say you're out of my life because you voted Republican. Don't say you're racist because you voted Republican. Don't say you're a bad person because you voted Republican. Take them for lunch and go, okay, explain it. Like, what were your reasons? I bet it wasn't racism. I bet it wasn't misogyny. I bet you they had real reasons. And I bet you their reasons are far more thought out than you think they were. And you know why I know that? Because they knew what they were giving up if they did it. Hey guys, interesting times these days. I'm recording this on, what's the date today? It is the 13th of November. And a lot happening in the world right now. Very, very interesting place. One of the things that has me, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but I just don't feel very good about how terrified and fearful so many people are after the US election result. Nobody wants people to be running around scared thinking the world's going to end. And, I know a lot of people are making fun of that, but I really think that in order for us to heal, I think we all need a little bit of empathy. And I think that, if we want society to come together, I think one of the things we're going to have to do is both sides, and they're like, let's call a spade a spade. There's two sides to what's happening right now. We're very divided. And in order to heal, I think both sides need to gain some understanding and compassion for what the other side is feeling, and maybe more importantly, why they're feeling the way they're feeling. One of the things that I learned, it was a long time ago, I learned it in my teenage years. I had a friend of mine who he had this skill where if he was ever in a conflict, what he would do is he would just call timeout, pause, take a step back, and put himself in the other person's shoes to gain perspective as to why they're feeling the way they're feeling. And when he would do that, he had the ability to neutralize the conflict very, very quickly, just because, giving them the understanding, giving the person who's in the conflict with the understanding of or gaining an understanding of where they're coming from. Once you have that understanding, you can usually, diffuse a situation. Today on the Army of Great Men podcast, my goal today is to help build a bit of a bridge. And the way I'm going to do that is this episode actually isn't for people who see the world the way I see it. I think most of the people who listen to the show see the world the way that I do, generally, not completely, but in a general sense, I think that's true. This episode is actually meant to be shared with people who don't see it the way that I do and the way that most of my listeners do. It's designed to help build a bridge and to help give the people who don't see the world the way I do some understanding of why I see the world the way I do. So it's going to be a fun experiment. We'll see if it works. With that said, new episode, Army of Great Men. Let's go. I'm speaking to people who are really panicked right now, people who are looking at the world like, all hell's going to break loose, like they're going to lose their rights, they're going to lose this, they're going to lose that. But more importantly, I'm trying to help give those people an understanding of why people like me feel the way I do. It's easy to just call people racists or bigots or misogynists or whatever. It's easy. It's an easy way to end any argument, right? Oh, his opinion doesn't count. He's racist. His opinion doesn't do this. He's racist. Well, why is he racist? Well, because he likes this person, so he must be racist. It's a bit of a bridge, but Let's talk about that. So most of the people I know who are left-leaning, and I've got lots of left-leaning friends, some are more tolerant than others. Lucky for me, most of them still have me somewhere in their life, but some of them have decided that I'm not worthy of their time anymore, and that's okay. That's their choice. When you think of someone who left the left, prior to them leaving, did you think they were racist? Did you think they were bad people? Did you think they were dumb? Do you think they lacked intelligence? Um, did you think they hated women? Did you think that they were against women's rights? Did you think they were bad people? Maybe just take a second and write a list down of the people who you knew and loved when they were lefties like you, who looked at the world the way that you do. Give your opinion of them. Just write it down. And you probably know a bunch of people that left that you now have, lost respect for, cut out of your life, whatever. So write down what you used to think of them. Did you think they were racist? Do you think they were dumb? Do you think they hated women? Do you think, da 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 da? I bet you didn't. Well, do you think that one day they just bumped their head and turned into sexist, racist bigots? Do you think one day, or they got just hit their head and became stupid one day? Maybe you think that's what happened. Maybe you think that they just got hit by the racist train and became a bunch of assholes overnight. And that could be. Maybe that's what happened to them. Maybe they got struck by a dumb lightning bolt and turned him into an idiot. Maybe that's what happened. Or maybe they started to see things in a bit of a different way. I'm going to give you some of the reasons that maybe some of those people started to change their views. And I'm going to give you my own personal experience. There were a lot of things that started to kind of wake me up to what was happening in the world. For me, I mean, the first thing was 9/11, right? And again, when I'm telling you this, you guys, I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right. I'm not trying to convince you that I know something that you don't know. I'm not trying to convince you that you're wrong and that I'm right. That is not what I'm trying to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share some of my opinions. I don't care if you agree with them or not. What I'm trying to do is to give you perspective on why I feel the way that I feel. Okay? So I want to make that clear. So I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just trying to show you why I feel the way I feel so that you can understand why I believe what I believe in an effort to show you that it's not rooted in racism or sexism or bigotry or stupidity. There's a reason the way I feel. So the first big, wait a sec, what's going on in the world was 9/11. I mean, I think, anybody old enough to, anybody who's old enough to know what was happening in 9/11, that was a where were you then moment, right? Like everybody remembers where they were when that second plane hit the tower, right? Not everybody remembers where they were when the first, because nobody was watching. But I'll never ever forget that day for me. I was living at my parents' house at the time. I just moved back to Regina, getting ready for work, heading to the shower in the morning, and my mom said, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. I went, what? Yeah, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. And I got in the shower and I went, oh man, I sure hope that was an accident. Got out of the shower, went downstairs, turned on the TV just as the second plane was hitting. And that was, I think, the moment for everybody where we went, oh shit. This is going to be bad. And of course, I'm not going to rehash the whole day, but we all know what happened that day. That was a big day for a lot of us, right? And everybody had their own experience, and everybody over the coming, months and years after that, we all had, kind of different opinions of what was happening. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around that day, right? And I'm not going to get into all the conspiracy theories. You can believe, anything you want. But that was the first time that I realized how awful the world could be, and that there are a lot of very wealthy people who are capable of benefiting off of a lot of people's pain. Dick Cheney was a wealthy man prior to 9/11. Dick Cheney was a very wealthy man in what happened in the years that followed. He used 9/11 as an excuse to start a war that had nothing to do with 9/11. Nothing. And we all know that now, right? We all know that now. But that was, for me, that was the first time where I went, I don't know if I can trust these people. And, it sounds maybe kind of stupid, right? Like your aha moment where you go, oh, I don't trust the government. Well, yeah, no shit, you don't trust the government. Why would you? Like, I'm sorry. Why would you? They've done nothing to earn our trust, right? And so that was a big moment for me, and I think for a lot of people, just that whole period after 9/11, where it really started to change the way that I looked at whether or not we can trust the people that are kind of running the show in this world. And that was what clinched it for me. I just don't trust them. And if you do, great. I'm sure you've got your reasons to trust them. And one of those reasons might be it's just easier, right? It's easier to not go down that rabbit hole. But for me, that was where things really started to change. I know for a lot of people, there were other aha moments, right? Epstein killing himself, right? I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. If you think Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, come on. Like, really? Really? The most high profile prisoner on the planet, the most high profile prisoner on planet Earth, whose story likely takes down many of the most powerful people on this earth, right? Like, we know that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't bringing, regular people to his island. We know this, right? I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. This is not a stretch. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is just like, we know this, right? We also know that what was happening there was really bad, right? Like, we can all agree on that, right? And I'm not saying that the Epstein issue was a right-wing issue or a left-wing issue or whatever. It's an evil, evil, evil thing. Pure evil, something that all of us, again, if you don't think what was happening on Epstein Island, then just turn this podcast off. There's no point in talking to you. You can't be reached. But if we agree that what happened on Epstein Island was awful, and if we agree that the people who went there were awful, and if we also agree that the people who went there were awful and rich and powerful and influential on what's happening in the world today, powerful, probably beyond ways that most of us can even fathom. And then we're going to sit here and we're going to take this leap of faith that Jeffrey Epstein, the most high profile prisoner on planet Earth, whose story would have ripples that will take down like the biggest of the big if it got out. And we're to believe that the cameras had a glitch, the guards missed it, and then he just killed himself conveniently while the cameras were in their little 3-minute glitch. Like, yeah, maybe that's what happened. I don't know. I doubt it. I think it leads to some suspicious thoughts and maybe some questions. But that was one of the other ones where I think a lot of people, my brother's in that boat. he didn't want to believe that things were as crazy as they were. And then when that happened, like his head just went, what? Everybody has their moment where they start to question things. And not everybody has had that moment yet. There's lots of people who don't at all. They just think that people that have been in charge of this world are good, honest people, and they only want what's best for us. And there's lots of days where I envy that. I envy that feeling because it's not fun to go down some of these rabbit holes and to start to think about what's happening in the world. But again, this isn't designed to convince you of anything. I'm just trying to give you the perspective that I have of what led me down the road of believing what I believe today. And I'm the norm, by the way, you guys. Those people that you wrote down on that list, the people that you wrote down that used to have views like you, and now, they've just lost their mind and they suddenly like, Trump and this and that and everything else. I'm the norm. Those people you see at the big rallies and at all of the Trump speeches and all those things, those people, I'm the norm there. You see the interviews, and I hate these interviews. It's gotcha journalism where you'll see like a reporter, and by the way, like right-wing journalists do this too. It's bullshit. I absolutely hate it. Where they'll go to, like some Democrat rally or Republican rally or whatever, and they'll go and they'll put their mic in people's faces, and they intentionally seek out to find the dumbest, craziest, nuttiest people they can find. Because if they can interview enough people that feel like that, even if it's just 1% of that crowd, if they can interview just the right people and then show those clips to people on the side that wants to think that everybody there is insane, then it starts to reinforce that they're all insane. Look, when I see the craziest of the crazy on the left, because that's all I see on my Instagram feed is the nuttiest of the nutty. I know that's not who left-wingers are. I know that. That's this much of them. But if that's all you see, you sort of get to the point where you're like, wow, they're all complete wingnuts. Like they're all complete lunatics. That's how they trick you. That's how these algorithms, that's how they get you. So I know that not all left-wingers are like that. But, a lot of my right-wing friends, that's what they think. They think, oh, all left-wingers are insane. Well, no, they're not. Look at the left-wingers you know. They're not insane. They just have their views are just a little different than yours. They're not nuts. They're not dumb. They just view the world a little differently than you do. Same thing for us. Same thing on the right. We're not dumb. If you look at the worst of us, yeah, the worst of us are a bunch of, like racist, sexist morons who can barely tie their shoes. Yeah, it's true. The worst of us, the worst, like 1 or 2% of the right and the worst 1 or 2% of the left. They're terrible people. They're dumber than posts. But that's not who society is. But that's what they've got us convinced of, right? So if you think of those people who used to look at the world the way you do and now look at it differently, again, they're not dumb. And they certainly aren't like those people you see on your Instagram videos where you see the craziest of the crazy. That's not who they are. That's not who most of them are. Most of them are really good people. And one of the things that shocks people from the left when they go and they start hanging around with people who are right wing, they're like, well, wait a sec, these people are awesome. They're great people. They're smart and they're funny. They're kind and generous. Oh my God. The thing that they always talk about is you talk to somebody who was left leaning, who then became right wing, and they started to hang around with people that lived in that world, and they see the generosity, the kindness, the compassion, and they're just like, this is not who I thought you were. No kidding. Most people are good on both sides, inherently. They want the best for society. We all want that. And it's okay to have differing views of what's best for society. That's allowed. Okay, I'm going to get back to some of the things that started to wake people up. So one of the things that's always bothered me about the LGBTQ community is this thought that if you're gay, you're also a pedophile. right? Like there's a lot of people who are very, and I don't like to use these labels, but a lot of people who are very homophobic, particularly, in the 80s and 90s and before that, where you just assume, a lot of people assume that if you were gay, you are also a pedophile. It's ludicrous, right? Like that's a whole different thing. And so for years, this was something that the gay community had to fight, was this, this association that if you're gay, you're somehow immoral, or you're a pedophile, you're like kids, or like, come on, give me a break. It's the dumbest thing in the world. But one of the things that's happened openly over the last number of years, and again, this isn't my opinion, this is just a fact, and this is one of the things that really started to wake a lot of people up. No, sorry, I don't want to say wake a lot of people up, because that would mean I'm trying to tell you that we're right and you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. Those poor choice of words. A lot of people started to sort of pause their thoughts and feelings on certain things when a lot of people, or some people in that world, started to sexualize children. That was wait, stop, hang on a sec. This doesn't feel right. Right? There's in lots of elementary schools, there are books in those schools that are very graphic. In my hometown of Lumsden, Saskatchewan, little old Lumsden, there was a huge uproar. This was, I don't know, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe less than, maybe 2 years ago. Anyway, there was this huge uproar about this material that was being passed around this school, talking about like some really, really graphic sexual images and sexual thoughts with like given to kids. And there was like this big town hall meeting, and people were, very, very upset, rightfully so. That there's only one reason that anybody would want to sexualize a kid, and that's if they view them sexually, right? There's no reason for a 6-year-old to be learning about this stuff. There's no reason for it at all. None. These are things that come across our timeline, and I'm not painting the LGBTQ community with this brush. Again, this is just a small piece of it, but trying to normalize the whole transgender movement, and biological men in women's sports, and biological men in women's locker rooms, and things like that. And this sort of falls, at least for me, this sort of falls under the line of like, really? Like, this feels like we're going a little too far with some of this stuff, right? If that makes me homophobic, if it makes me homophobic to say, I don't want us pushing trans things into kids' lives, right? Any more than I want pushing straight sexual thoughts into kids' lives, or straight sexual acts, or this. It's not about gay, straight, trans, not like whatever. It's not about that. Why are we talking to our kids about this stuff? Like, it's not something we should be talking to kids about. You see these young transgender kids dancing super provocatively in front of a room full of adults. Like, there's lots of videos out there publicly, and they're dressed really inappropriately and dancing, and the crowd's going nuts. And it's like, really? That's what we're celebrating? And so, like that for me and for a lot of people was kind of our, no, too far. Too far. There's videos of like school board meetings where a parent will stand up and they'll read a book that's in the library of their kid's school. Elementary schools, they'll be reading a book, reading chapters from the book, incredibly graphic things. And the school board will shut them down. They'll say, no, that is not appropriate. You cannot say that in this meeting. And they're like, we can't say it in this meeting full of adults, but we can say it. We can let our kids read it in school? Wait, what? And again, all I'm trying to do is just give you some of the perspective that I have as to why I started to feel like, might be time to start fighting back against some of this stuff. Might be time. And the absurdity, like, it just goes nuttier than nuttier, right? Like, there's a There's a university professor in Ontario. I want to say Guelph, although I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, like a 50-year-old man who, by day, identified as a 50-year-old man. He was actually a university professor, but on evenings and weekends, identified as a 12-year-old girl. And on evenings and weekends, entered in youth girls swimming competitions. So this 50-year-old man is swimming, competing against 12-year-old girls and changing in their locker room. Like, and I'm not making this up, you guys. Like, look it up. Look up David Menzies. He's a reporter who went, like, this is a real thing. It sounds insane because it is. And he interviews like the people with the people who are in charge of the swimming association. And they interview this woman, and she's like the head of the, and she's like, well, I don't know. What do you want us to do? Like, says he's a 12-year-old girl. Like, what do you want us to do about it? It's like, really? What do you, really? Okay. So, you know, when people say, well, how could you support Donald Trump and his team when you have a daughter, like I have a daughter, right? And yeah, I get it. I get why you'd say that. I mean, Trump has certainly said some things in the past that, you know, were not overly respectful, pretty disrespectful to women. And I get that. I get why people, you know, would look at some of those things as unforgivable. I'm not judging you for that. I get it. But when people say to me, well, how could you support a man who said those things when you have a daughter? How do you look your daughter in the eye knowing that you support this? Well, as far as I can tell, there's only one side out there who wants to stop biological men in women's locker rooms and who wants to stop, you know, sexualizing our youth. And so whoever that side is, I'm going to stick with that side. You can call it the lesser of two evils, whatever. Like, yeah, if I'm looking at it and going, what's going to impact my daughter more? What's happening today with all this crazy shit, or something that politicians said on Howard Stern 20 years ago? I don't know. That's just how I look at it. One of the other big issues that, you know, when I became aware of, it really made me upset. And again, I'm not trying to convince you of this. I'm just telling you why I feel the way I feel. And if you're hearing this and all you hear is, oh, Adam's a bigot, Adam's a sexist, Adam's a homophobe, Adam's a racist, I don't think I've said anything so far today that would be any of those things. But I do know people who listen to this, and that's exactly what they would accuse me of, because it's all they have, right? But if you're listening to this, I know that you're open-minded and you're trying to listen to why I feel the way I feel. Not just me, most of us, most Republicans, this is how we feel. If that's the conclusion you want to come to, that I'm a bigot, then fine. Just stop listening. Because if you think what I said so far is wrong, probably not much point in listening to the rest. One of the other big issues, of course, is the border, right? I don't know how wanting a secure border makes you racist. Doesn't seem like a race issue to me. But that's maybe because, you know, I learned about racism. And I don't want this to come across as high and mighty, but, you know, I'll never forget it. When I was 10 years old, Roots was on my TV, and I grew up in a town. We didn't have like any black people in it. Like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about anything. And I said something at the age of 8 or 10 or whatever it was that was racist as a kid. And my dad heard me and he went, whoa, 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 where are you getting that? And I must have heard it on the playground or something. And he goes, time out. We're going to have a little visit. And so he didn't give me shit. I could tell, you know, he wasn't very happy with what I said. And rightfully so, as you should as your parent. But he came home and he had a record of like Martin Luther King's most famous speeches. And he made me listen to them, and then I had to write down what I thought. Like, what's the message here? And the message was, you judge people by their actions and nothing else. Like, if we're really summarizing it clearly, that's it. That's all Martin Luther King wanted. He just wanted people to be judged and treated based on who they were as a person and the actions that they brought to the world, not their skin color, their race, their this, their that, and everything else. It feels like sometimes we use someone's race or whatever as an excuse for them to behave in a way that they shouldn't behave. I actually think that if a politician were to, regurgitate Martin Luther King's speeches today, a lot of people would view it as alt-right hate speech, right? This concept that you're just going to treat people based on their actions is kind of ludicrous. So I don't care what color somebody is coming over the border. I don't care what their religion is. I don't care what it is. I just kind of want people to follow the rules. Just seems kind of logical. And if it's just about that, like if you only looked at it and said, well, these people just want a better life, they're good people. And yeah, the majority of them I'm sure are. But there are some other issues that are coming out of the border, particularly what's happening with child trafficking. And if you are in favor of child trafficking, again, just stop listening. I know you're not, right? Nobody's in favor of child trafficking. But one side of the politicians appear to be really kind of downplaying that this is happening. You can come to your own conclusions as to why they might be motivated to do that. And then one side is like, hang on, no, this is happening. We got to stop. Dr. Phil, I would strongly, strongly encourage you to just go to the Google machine and type in Dr. Phil child trafficking interview. Dr. Phil child trafficking interview. You will find hours and hours and hours and hours of content where he's on podcasts, where he's on this, where he's talking about it. I tried to send this to somebody recently who I love dearly, and she just said, I can't listen to this. It's too dark for me. I can't face it. Okay, I get it. Like, you think I want to face, like, nobody wants to learn about this shit. It is like, it tears your soul apart hearing about it. But don't then, you don't get to play the card where you say, well, if you want the border closed, you're racist, when you won't take the time to understand what's going on there. When you won't take the time to understand how vile and despicable some of what's happening at the border is. And it is like, it's a big problem, you guys. Like, it is a really, really big problem. Dr. Phil gave this interview. He's talked about it a lot. Talks about these kids who are coming over the border, and they've got like a name and a number on their shoulder, and like young kids, like 8 years old. And the name will say like Dave Smith, Chicago, phone number. So the border guard grabbed this kid, look at the thing, call the number. This Dave Smith. Yeah. You're in Chicago. Yeah. Okay. I have this kid here. Here's his name. Yeah. Will you accept him if we fly him to you? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. And Dr. Phil's watching this. And then he says to the guy who's like the top of the border in that area. And he goes, how do you know that this kid isn't being used for like child slavery or sex trafficking or something like that? And the guy said, we know they are. They 100% are being used for that. Well, then why don't you stop it? And he's like, what can we do? When you see that, when you see it, and I, again, it's hard to go down the road of things you're uncomfortable with, right? Nobody wants to go down these roads. I'm the same. Like, look, when I go to a fundraiser for, child trafficking, I can't even make it through like Make-A-Wish functions, you guys. Like, I just can't do it because like I'll sit there and I'll give money and I'll donate. But like when they're telling their stories, like I plug my ears sometimes. I'll try to think of anything else because it just tears my soul apart. Like, like I've got, my kids are everything to me. And just the thought of them having to go down that road, like I knock on wood, like my anxiety level just went to here. So I get why you don't want to see it. But not seeing it doesn't make it go away. And when you don't take the time to understand what's going on, that gives license to the people that are allowing it to happen to keep letting it happen. And so if you can't do it, if you can't face it, that's fine. Don't stand in the way of the people who want to fix it. Right? Don't stand in their way. If you don't want to get on the front lines and fight or be vocal in help, fine. You don't have to do that. Don't enable the people that are doing it, and don't stand in the way of the people who are wanting to fight it. And so, like in this last election, a lot of people became aware of these issues. Dr. Phil was spreading this word like crazy. There was a lot of people that were suddenly becoming aware, going, wait a sec, this border issue isn't about stealing jobs or this or that. Like, who gives a shit? It's about this stuff. And again, there were a lot of people looking at what's, once they saw that was going on, and they say, okay, there's two sides to this argument. There are two sides of this policy. One of the parties is responsible for opening the border the way they did. One of the parties is responsible for that, and the other one is actively trying to stop it. And then now they might say to you, well, yeah, but there was this bill that the Dems are trying to put forward to close the border, and Trump organized it so they would block it. That's a bit of a spin, right? Do you know why they stopped it? Because part of that bill was to grant amnesty to everybody who's already in. So they couldn't deport all the child traffickers and all that. It granted immediate amnesty to everybody who crossed already. So, like it's not exactly as, Kamala and her team were saying. There's a little more to the story. Why it wasn't Trump playing politics? He wants this border closed, and he wants us to have the ability to get rid of the people that came in that are causing a bunch of problems. And will some good people, get hurt when they're deporting a whole bunch of people? Yeah, unfortunately, that's going to happen. The people who came over illegally, some good people came over legally. There's lots of good people that came over illegally, but you know what? Rules are rules, and that's part of what's going to happen. And it sucks, but it's part of what's going to happen. And when I look at, which would I rather see happen? Just keep letting everybody come in for the sake of the good people who came in illegally, or start to clean it up. I personally think it's maybe time to clean it up. That was one of the other things that started to wake a lot of people up over the last year, and why I think you're starting to see so many people move from the left to the right. I think there were more people before, but they were too ashamed to admit it because they're afraid of getting canceled, because society had labeled it that if you're a right winger, you're automatically a horrible human being. But eventually, that narrative started to just lose all meaning. And I think part of it was, like people were starting to say, well, I don't care what this person says about me. Like, they're saying I'm a bad person. Look at them. Like, I don't give a shit about their opinion. I know I'm not a bad person, right? Perfect example, right? During the trucker protests, right? Actually, we're going to talk about COVID for a minute as another thing that woke a lot of people up. Okay. So I didn't get vaccinated, and I had a lot of people in my life that were begging me to get vaccinated. There were a couple of interventions. There were, you got to get this done. And that's fine. Like, it all came from a place of love, because that's what they believed I needed to do. And that's fine. The reason I didn't get vaccinated, there were a few. Number one, I live in the country, and it was really easy for me to isolate. I wasn't worried about running into people all the time. If I lived in a 1-bedroom condo in Toronto, maybe I would have felt differently. But like, it was real easy for me out in the country. There was no issue for me and my family. Like, we couldn't go to the movies. Big deal. Like, who gives a shit? But for me, it was an easy decision. And part of why it was an easy decision is that I knew some people in the early days of the vaccine that got really badly hurt. I knew it. I knew a teenager who died. I knew a bunch of people who had strokes and people who got really sick and had really bad reactions. And I knew that, like, when I was a kid, I got my booster shot. What would that have been? Like 6 years old. It wiped me out for like a week to 10 days. Like I couldn't get off the couch. Like I was sick, like sick. So I always had it in the back of my mind that, like, things like the flu shot or things like this, like, if you got it and it works for you, great. But clearly there are people that react differently to it. And I knew my experience when I was 6 years old, like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. This doesn't feel like a good idea. And then when some people that I know and love had some really, really adverse reactions, I sat and I thought and I prayed on it and I thought about all these things and I went, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can. And so, like when people that, like, loved ones and things who said, you can't come to Christmas, I totally respected it. Like, that's fine. That's just fine. If you're not comfortable because I'm not vaccinated, I don't have an issue with that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can't, like, if I want you to respect my choices, then I would be very hypocritical if I didn't respect yours. So if you got the vaccine and you're happy with it, that's great. But to paint people who didn't get vaccinated as bad people, as they were doing, right? Like Trudeau would stand up there and just gaslighting, just like, one of my friends in Ontario, 34 years old, he had a stroke after his first shot. He's totally healthy. Like the afternoon, he got his shot in the morning. That afternoon, he had a stroke. And his wife works in the medical industry. So she was like, so anyway, so they go to get a medical exemption. So, because they wanted to travel, they write to, I can't remember who they wrote to, whoever they wrote to, someone in the government. They wrote to get a medical exemption so he wouldn't get his second shot. And they wrote a letter back saying, hey, look, I'm paraphrasing, but it said, look, we recognize that you're of higher risk. We won't grant you a medical exemption, but what we would like to do is when you get your second shot, we're going to book your room in the hospital so that if you have another stroke, we can treat you immediately. I swear to God. So, like, that guy, is he a bad person because he doesn't want to get his second shot? No. When the truckers started their rally, it was the first time that people like me felt like, oh man, they're standing up for me. They're standing up for me. And then Trudeau and his merry band of idiots, they started to say things like, when the truckers were honking their horn, the honk honk was an acronym for, it was to say HH, honk honk, Hail Hitler. That's what they were saying. So imagine being my friend, the one who couldn't get his medical exemption because they said, come to the hospital and get your second shot here because we think you might have another stroke. So imagine that guy. And then imagine that this trucker rally, so they're standing up for people like him, that our politicians are saying that these people are Nazis because honking their horn is a symbol for HH, Hail Hitler. Like, imagine how that would make you feel if you were that person, right? Or then imagine, like Trudeau stands up and says that the people that are supporting this rally, the majority of them are racist and misogynists. What about not wanting to get a vaccine? Wait, what? How does that make them racist or misogynist? What? Huh? And then, like, to hear that makes me racist from a guy who wore blackface so many times that he doesn't know how many times he did it. Someone who publicly got caught groping a reporter. And then in his apology said, I wouldn't have done that had I known who you were. So, like, if you were just like a regular woman, not a reporter. It would have been cool to grope you. But because for a lot of reasons, I couldn't bring myself to get vaccinated, it makes me a misogynist and a racist? Huh? I'm not saying that, like different in the US, whatever, but that was kind of the undertone, right? Like if you were not going to get vaccinated, you were this horrible person. Well, maybe people had reasons. Maybe they're not anti-science. Maybe they just had some experiences that led them to go, I don't know, this one doesn't feel right. I'm going to sit and wait. And it's not like they weren't punished for it. Huge sacrifices for people to not get that shot. People lost their jobs. People couldn't travel. People couldn't do this. People lost friendships. People weren't invited to Christmas. Like, it's not like they were rewarded for this. It came at a great cost. And then to be like this gaslighting, it's hard to come back from that, right? It's hard to look at our politicians and go, oh yeah, I trust them. They seem like good guys. I get why you would look at Republicans if you only looked at the worst behavior of Republican politicians, of Republican people, of Republican voters. If you only looked at their worst actions, you're going to see the worst part of society. Just like if we look at the worst of the left. I get it. I really, really do. I understand why there are certain things that you've seen that you can't bring yourself to come back from. Believe me, I'm not proud of my worst moments. I'm not proud of the worst moments of anybody in this world. You want to be judged based on the worst things you've ever done? That's what you want your legacy to be? Fill your boots. It's a hard hill to climb back. A hard thing to come back from. But to just lazily say that anybody who disagrees with you on this issue or that issue is a Nazi or is a fascist or is a racist or is a misogynist. Again, let's go back to that list, right? That list that I asked you to write out earlier. That list that said, these are the people who I knew, who I loved prior to them becoming Republicans, right? Look at the list. Look at what you thought of them before. Were they racist? Nope. Were they misogynist? Nope. Were they Nazis? Nope. Were they fascists? Nope. So anyway, like it just felt like a stretch, right? And felt lazy to just say that, okay, if you chose not to get vaccinated as I did, then you must be a racist. Huh? Like, I don't get it. Anyway, not going to beat a dead horse, but you get what I mean, right? Like, so when somebody like me, and there's a lot of us out there, when they get accused of being racist or sexist or misogynist or Nazis or fascists simply because they do something that the left doesn't agree with, those words start to lose all meaning. Right? And it's not to say that, like if I was actually racist, like if I did something that was racist, I would feel horrible. I wouldn't want to do anything that was actually racist. But when somebody like Justin Trudeau says, "Oh, you're racist because of X," it's like, fuck you, man. Like, really? That's the card you're going to play? And the only sad part about it is how many people believe it, because it's just like constantly shoved down their throats, right? By the media, by celebrities, by this, by that, by, like you name it, you just get it from everywhere. And that's how they kept everybody silent for so long, is like nobody wants to be thought of as racist, especially in this era of cancel culture, right? There's so many people. I've got so many friends who have left the left, but they can't tell anybody. I've got one friend who, he's terrified that it's going to come out that he and his wife are now Republicans, because he's going to lose his job. If his boss finds out If his boss find out, they're American. If his boss finds out that he voted for Trump, he's going to get fired from his job. Not to mention he's still going to lose like lots of friends and this. He's terrified. He's terrified. We're still there, even though like it was a like a landslide victory for Trump. There are still lots of people who are terrified that if they come out, it's funny to say come out. This is the new coming out of the closet, right? It's funny to say that if they come out as Republican, that's going to be their punishment. Like it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So again, let's get back to that list. Let's come back to that original list of those people. So after hearing what I said today, do you think that one day they woke up and got, hit with a racist tree branch and they became bigots overnight? Or, do you think they bumped their head and they just got real dumb instantly? Or something happened and they just decided, you know what? I'm tired of being a good person. I'm going to be evil from now on. I want to be a Nazi. That's what I'm going to do. Like, do you think that happened? Or do you think maybe there were just some factors that they went, I don't know if I can live with this anymore, right? Donald Trump has flaws. Every Republican knows it. We know what they are. But you know what? He's the only one who wants to change this stuff. If it's in a two-party system, you've got one guy who's saying, no. We're going to fix this stuff. We're going to fight for the kids. We're going to do things to stop child trafficking. And whether you believe he's going to do that or not, that's a whole nother conversation. Time will tell, right? The fear that's being spread. Like on The View, I saw a clip the other day. They're saying that they're going to break up interracial marriages. Huh? This is the level of fear-mongering going on. Going to, take away gay rights and you're not going to be able to get married and you're not going to be able to... Huh? Like, that he already was president once, right? And like none of these things happened. And then when you ask for proof, he's going to do this, he's this, it'll be like some obscure article where somebody in the Republican Party said this one thing one time and it proves that, they're going to ban gay marriage. If that's the way you want to do it, fill your boots. It's not going to happen, you guys. And if it does, I can tell you, Republicans are going to revolt. If they were to ban gay marriage, Republicans would be pissed. I'm telling you. That's not what we want. We just want to be left alone. Again, I'm the norm. I'm not the outlier in the Republican Party. Just like those people you wrote down on your list, they're not outliers either. They're the same people they were before. They just kind of had enough. If you look at Winston Churchill, who I think most of us would agree, if Winston Churchill was never born, there's a reasonable chance that the Germans would have won World War II, right? If you look at the worst things Churchill did, right? Churchill wasn't necessarily the nicest guy. Go look it up. Go watch a movie about Churchill. Go study history. There are a lot of things Churchill did that, like, then, today, in the future, anytime, any people behave the way he did, you go, that guy's an asshole. How could you support him? Sometimes you need an asshole on your side, you guys. I mean, I've got a very strict no asshole rule in my life. I don't associate with assholes. You know what? Sometimes you need one. It's like a hockey team, right? Or football team. Like a lot of teams that win championships, they've got that one guy that you just hate. How could you cheer for that guy? Look what he does. Yeah, but he's our asshole. You can debate whether or not Donald Trump is an asshole. I don't care. It's not the point. But if you think he's an asshole, that's fine. But he's the one fighting for what we care about. And he's the only option there is. He's the only one. And that's why the team that he's assembled is so exciting. right? It's so exciting. I talked about 9/11 at the start of this call. I don't think Dick Cheney gets the respect he deserves as being one of the most evil humans in the history of this planet. Like, go do some research on Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney's not far off, right? Like, just hasn't accomplished as much as Dick. We look back through history, the last number of presidents, the last number of this, and while they may have been on different parties, it was the same shit. It's all controlled by the same people. Republican Dems, Bushes, the Clintons. Like, you just go down the list. Like, it's all the same shit, you guys. It's all the same shit. And, you know, we used to rebel against the establishment. We used to rebel against, you know, the capitalists that controlled the world. We used to rebel against big pharma. We used to rebel against big media, big this and all this stuff. And now, if you rebel against them, you're the bad guy, right? Like, the tables have just totally flipped. And people ask me, why don't you trust the media? My question is, why do you? What have they done to earn your trust? Right? Like, it's all propaganda. And you say, well, Fox News is too. No shit. I don't watch Fox News either. Where do you get your info then? Go to the source. I listen to what people say. RFK Jr. I never listen to what people say about RFK Jr. I listen to what he says. You listen to what he says, you listen to what he's fighting for. Is he going to be right about everything? Definitely not. No human is. Does he have skeletons in his closet? Absolutely. He's got a famous line. It's like, if all my skeletons could vote, I'd be the next president. Meaning, like, he's done some shit he wishes he had back. We all do, you guys. Everybody on this earth has things that they wish they could have back. These people are fighting to make us healthy. They want to take on big pharma. They want to change the rules. They want to stop wars. They want to, like, all these things. Or we can just keep going with the same groups that have started all these wars. And again, I'm not saying it's just the Dems, Republicans, Bushes, Clintons, like, you just go down the line. Ask any Republican you know. You like George Bush? Fuck no. You don't like George Bush? Junior, senior, no way. They're brutal, awful people, warmongers, terrible human beings. You know who George Bush doesn't like? George Bush doesn't like the Republican Party today. Why is that? Why is that? These are the things, you guys. These are the things that the people on your list, they didn't bump their head. They didn't turn into bad people overnight. None of those things happened. They started to see the world in a different way. They don't hate women. They love women. They're voting for somebody who they think is going to protect women's rights. Keep women's rights. My point, guys, is that these people, the people who voted Republican, they're not bad people. They're not the people the media is painting them out to be. Just like the lefties that we see, the ones that are, shaving their head and going crazy and, saying all the crazy shit, we know that those don't represent you. We know that's not who you are. You're the same loving, awesome people that we've been spending Christmas with our whole lives. We love you. And we don't demand that you think the way we do. We don't. We believe in freedom, and we believe in your freedom too. We're not bad people, and neither are you. But this divide that's happening in the world today, it's all by design. It's all by design. There's a great analogy. These two species of ants, red ants, black ants. I'll get the names wrong. But you can put them in a jar, and they can cohabitate like crazy, and they won't fight. But if you shake the jar, it's war. They go crazy. So the analogy is, who's shaking our jar? I don't know the answer to that. Somebody's doing it. I don't know why, but they do. They want us divided, and I'm not sure why, but they do. That's a whole nother episode. Those people that you used to love, they're the same people they always were. And if you reach out to them and you say, okay, why did you do this? Don't say you're out of my life because you voted Republican. Don't say you're racist because you voted Republican. Don't say you're a bad person because you voted Republican. Take them for lunch and go, okay, explain it. Like, what were your reasons? I bet it wasn't racism. I bet it wasn't misogyny. I bet you they had real reasons. And I bet you their reasons are far more thought out than you think they were. And you know why I know that? Because they knew what they were giving up if they did it. They knew that if they did it, it was going to come at great cost. They were going to lose friends. They were going to lose family members. There were going to be things that they weren't able to do anymore. But it got to the point where they looked at the cost of keeping going down the road they were going versus the cost of losing some of those relationships. And they came out and said, you know what? No, this is too important. But now, you guys, it's time to heal. It's time to heal. I promise you, like, if you're panicking, you think this world's it's not even going to be close to being as bad as you think. In fact, it's going to be really good, but only if you open your eyes up in order to see it, right? I had a conversation with somebody recently. She said, we're going to war. Why? Well, Trump's in power. Well, you know that he's the first sitting president in the last 32 years who didn't start a new war, right? You also know that when he was done, when his first term ended, we had peace in the Middle East for the first time since Christ was a cowboy. You know that, right? And then I said, well, what happens if we stop the Ukrainian war? What happens if the Ukrainian war stops? What happens if the Palestinian-Israeli conflict ends right away because Trump's in office? Like, would you give credit for that? And the answer was, well, no, because if Trump did that, then he must have been doing something bad in order to get that done. If you're going to be so stubborn that you can't look at any of it, then yeah, just go the next 4 years just looking for all those reasons to keep your viewpoints. That's fine. I love changing my views. I love it. There's nothing better than growing and evolving your views. It's great. But if you're going to dig your heels in and just to say that no matter what anybody does, it's bad, give credit where it's due. Start to look at things from a higher level. Take your emotion out of it and have conversations with people who voted the way they did. Have conversation with them. Ask them. You're going to see they're those same loving, awesome people that you had in your life before. They are. I promise. They didn't change. Anyway, I love you guys. All of you. Left, right, up, down, center. I don't care where you line. I love people. It's a blessing and a curse. I love everybody. And it kills me to see people having these meltdowns and being just, so terrified because of all the propaganda that's been shoved down their throats over the last decade. It's no way to live, you guys. See what's happening. There's real change. And you know what? It's time. It's time for real change. This world needs change. You're not going to get change by keeping doing the exact same thing you've been doing. You're not. So let's please stop the hate. If you're a righty and you're listening to this, don't mock and ridicule your left-wing friends. Don't do it. It's not what they need right now. They need a hug. Let them in both ways. Let's build a bridge. We can do this, you guys. Anyway, I love you. Thanks for listening. And yeah, let's start the healing. If you guys enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Like, subscribe, all those good things. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. You can listen to stuff anywhere and follow me on Instagram at Army of Great Men. Thanks, you guys. This was I hope this hits. Even if this just reaches one person, it'd be worth it to me. I know I rambled on a little bit today, but this is a big one. Anyway, thanks, you guys.